Be here. This is my first time in this part of India. So Roger has mentioned this particular talk as the epics in IEEE, and I hope that as I present this, you will in fact find this an epic adventure. So you see a list of the team. I am a co-initiative leader for this particular IEEE project. And so Roger has already introduced me, so I'm not going to say anything further about myself. I'll move on to, and Roger has introduced IEEE somewhat, but we've had lunch and some of us may have forgotten parts of it, so I'm going to touch on elements of IEEE that you may be less familiar with. So IEEE, as you've heard, started from the American Institute of Electrical Engineers, and then it moved over and it eventually merged with the Institute for Radio Engineers. But perhaps the connection to humanitarian activities is maybe not always as clear, but it may be of interest to know that when the Institute of Radio Engineers was formed, it was in April 1912, and that was just within a month of the disaster of the Titanic. So already at the time, some 2,200 people were on the Titanic, the so-called unsinkable ship, and it was due to the radio distress calls that that safety was in fact brought to the 700 that were rescued. So in fact, IEEE is quite used to partnership, but this particular image that I've just brought about, as you can see, has a technical connotation with gears, and we've been good at partnering with ourselves, with other technical societies. So what are some of the things? We've heard that IEEE is one of the largest publishers. We have 3.5 million articles. We host a large number of conferences in the region, in Region 8. Last year alone we had about 450 conferences. We look at standards, and we're also looking at now standards for humanitarian technologies. So, what is IEEE today? And I don't know, some of you that may not be engineers or may not be technical professionals, you may prefer this version of what our acronym could stand for, the Institute of Engineers, and maybe everybody else. So I hope everybody feels included. So we are a volunteer-led organization. Around the world, we have 40,000 volunteers. And we are present in 191 countries. So we have heard things like community engagement. We have heard things like keeping local. And we see, for example, collaboration that takes place between the Kerala section and a number of non-governmental organizations. We could also be looking at aspects such as these. We know that non-governmental organizations have their own network, and we, through IEEE, of course, have our network in so many countries. So I think we talked about challenges, but I think we talked about global challenges, but I think we can also think about global solutions which could be implemented for local areas, and I will try to cover some of this as I proceed in this particular presentation. So we talked about things, we talked about change, and I think that in IEEE we have a portfolio called Engineering for Change, E4C, and Engineering for Change is really a content provider that accumulates a number of solutions that are geared for humanitarian work. So I've tried to tilt this presentation to, how about changing engineering, and change engineering is sometimes, here's a quotation from Nelson Mandela, that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And with these words, I will introduce EPICS. EPICS was conceptualized by Professor Lee Jameson, the Dean of Engineering at Purdue University. And EPICS, standing for Engineering Projects in Community Service. Now I know in IEEE we have many acronyms, so if you make some mistake and you think of engineering programs for challenge services, or challenging services, those are all okay, as long as we have the same end goals in mind. So the initiative when it was introduced at Purdue University, the idea was to integrate one of the university modules or subjects in engineering program, but we can think bigger. You know, we don't only have to think engineering, we can also think about academic programs that are offered for the built environment. So things like architecture, where we could look at in an academic program to have one of the modules that introduce the concept of engineering change, but looking at the at a community as where the solutions will be implemented, but not